Hey everybody, it's Kent with KG's Books. Today I'm going to make a quick little video to tell you about my friend Max's new podcast on YouTube. It's called Destination Unknown. I'm going to share a bunch of clips later in this video to give you an idea of what it's all about. You can find it on his Paper Gold Podcast channel here on YouTube. Just search Paper Gold Podcast, Paper Gold Podcast, and it should show up for you. If nothing else, I'm going to post a link down in the description of this video. That might help you find it. So in his Destination Unknown series, Max interviews a bunch of fellow booksellers, talking about the book industry, book selling, buying, collecting, all that kind of stuff. In his first interview, he talked to Phil Monteleone. Phil has a bookstore in Smithville Flats, New York. He also sells books on eBay, and he has a really popular YouTube channel. Check out The Book Peddler. I love watching his videos, and I think you will too. I'll post a link for him down below as well. Next, he talked to Aaron Pappenfuse of the Midtown Scholar in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. He has a YouTube channel as well. It's called the Midtown Scholar Bookstore. Next, he did an interview with me, which most of you probably already know a little bit about me, but you can watch Max's video interviewing me to learn a little bit more about my book business. Finally, in his latest episode, he interviewed Ken Sanders of Ken Sanders Rare Books. Ken Sanders has been a big deal in the antiquarian book market for many years. Some of you might recognize him from, he's been an appraiser on Antiques Roadshow a bunch of times, so his face is probably pretty popular to some of you. And then Max already has a couple other really interesting interviews lined up. I think there's a new episode that comes out every week. So if you enjoy my videos, I think you will really like his as well. Again, that's the Paper Gold Podcast YouTube channel. Make sure you go check out his videos, subscribe to his channels, and stay tuned for some interesting book clips.
People are going to watch this conversation and they're going to, they're going to enjoy just the banter that we have back and forth about books and bookstores. I encounter a lot of people who would love to own a bookstore. It's just this nostalgic, romantic idea they have. And I think that you have to have an online presence to have a bookstore, for the most fact. What advice would you give to someone who's contemplating this idea? Maybe they're retiring from their profession now, and maybe it's just time for them to do something different. They want to change a chapter in their lives. You've done it. You have documented it. You've done it. You've even talked about things you failed at and wish you could have relearned. One of those things is you wish you had worked under an antiquarian bookseller. So what advice would you give to people who would love to do what you do?
Well, there's multiple things, and every situation is going to be different, and everybody's characteristics are different. I did make a YouTube video on this that people can look up, where I did lay out like what I wish I had done and what I couldn't have expected. What I would say, going into business for yourself is if you were to apprentice, it would better prepare you. You got to know your numbers, and you got to know if this is going to be feasible. You got to know when to pull the trigger too. You can overanalyze all day. I know people that do this. Ideas are a dime a dozen. You know what I'm saying? But until you're actually carrying it out, it really just comes down to the individual. But I would say first and foremost, know your numbers, be strategic. If you're not, see, the tough thing is like experience is everything. The more times you handle the material, you're going to learn more. I guess it really depends on, are you doing a new bookstore? Are you doing a mixture? Are you specializing? Where are you opening this bookstore? I would agree with you to online utilize that. So and learn that. There's so many different facets to this business though. I mean, unless if you have a big pot of money, you're gonna have to get a little creative.
Where do you envision book culture changing in the next decade?
Well, I mean, 5-10 years ago, there's all this, the book is dead mantra.
Oh gosh, yes.
No real book people ever believe that. We have always lived in a far distant corner of the universe. We're not normal, we're not mainstream, and we never will be. Ergo, we will never die. We'll never go. Yes, we die out. You and I are going to die out sooner. But I am seeing, and going back some years now, younger booksellers getting into the trade.
Look at it. Let's go back to your exercise. So if you're pricing a book between $30 and $40, it stands to reason that there are many other copies of this book out there. You've already not priced it as if it were incredibly scarce or very rare. So you know that somebody else is selling that exact same book at least for $50, and probably they're selling it for other things. So in order to sell, so that sort of establishes the high end of the market, and in order to actually figure out what it's worth, it is useful to lower that price, slash it in half or into a quarter, and then put it up there for auction. I like the auction concept. Auctions work particularly well for certain types of books. Yeah. So there is some truth to the fact that if you were like, so I would put at auction, books that have to do with topics that do well, that people are searching for regularly on eBay, as opposed to maybe a very obscure technical book of something, something else. So it may depend a little bit on the book, but generally speaking, that is a great exercise. And also booksellers, if they're willing to wheel and deal, they should sell to other booksellers.
Respect for you, because it takes thick skin to price things that you have at high value, at 99 cents. And so I'm guessing when you first began this part of the journey, when you didn't have your audience all built in, that it was a little bit more of an emotional roller coaster than it is now for you.
Yeah, for sure. There's plenty of things that I'm like, oh man, that should have brought $100 and it brings 10. And it's like, well, hopefully I didn't pay too much for it, and it's not a worry if it sells cheap. And you know what? I think it's good to let your buyers get some deals, because then they keep coming back and watching if they get some stuff cheap.
Yeah, I think you make a phenomenal point there. Customer relations. I think that's one way that great booksellers can separate themselves nowadays, with just the multiple platforms: Amazon, eBay, Macari, Etsy, Biblio, all the platforms out there. There has to be something that we can do as booksellers to separate us from the pack. And one of those things is just phenomenal customer service and allowing customers to get good deals.
Yeah.
So, I sell on Whatnot, and I sell high value books as well. I start everything at $5. But now I've developed enough of a clientele that come to all of the shows. So if you get a phone call and a customer says, I'm coming in, I'm going to bring you 3-4 boxes of books. And let's just say, are you cherry picking them, or are you buying all 3 or 4 boxes?
I try to cherry pick anymore. If they just want it gone. I mean, I tend to look at it differently now when I'm getting called to a house or someone's coming in. I'm kind of providing a service basically to take this stuff off your hands. And so if you're going to make me take all these boxes, now I talk tough now. I'm a little bit of a softy, depending on who it is. But you are providing them a service at the end of the day. They need to get rid of this stuff. I don't, try to be too cheap or whatever. But at the end of the day, I got to make money. It's my time.
Right. Yeah. In my Paper Gold Patreon group, there are a lot of members who do free pickups.
Yeah.
And they do fantastic, which just sort of, it tells me and you that there's so much inventory out there.
Yeah.
That, I'm just a firm believer that used books, you can make a very comfortable living selling used books with a little bit of dangerous knowledge and the desire.
See fishing, and I begged Pop, my grandfather, to take me to Bertrand Smith's Acres of Books, 240 Long Beach, California. I have no idea to this day. How did I know about this?
Right.
I go in there. It had to be the old man, Bertrand Smith himself. It was endless, room after room. giant skylights. The back rooms had no electricity. If it was a cloudy day, of course, Southern California, that doesn't happen. You had needed a flashlight to even browse the titles. He unlocked the door to this rare book room, and I bought a giant Alice in Wonderland coloring book. I bought a beautiful 20s illustrated Alice by Gwyneth Hudson, a Welsh woman who only ever illustrated 2 books, Alice and Peter Pan.
Okay.
Bought a Maxfield Parrish Arabian Nights, and I bought the folio Raven by Poe with the Gustave Doré.
Gustave Doré, yes.
I paid $17.50 for that book. I've sold 2 of them in the past year. That my copies, my own personal copy, I don't have that one,
Right.
sad. That's another story. I have a nice copy. They're never nice. I've sold 2 nice ones in the past year at $3,000 and $3,500.
You give the viewers one from your vantage point, and I'll give them one from my vantage point.
Well,
And we give them something. We give them something to chew on.
Sure. Like magazines, typically have gone under the radar. One of my largest sales was a magazine sale.
Right.
I can lot them together. Different niche ones.
What was that magazine? What was the issue?
So it was Staubach. He was a Heisman Trophy winner.
Roger
and-
Staubach. Roger Staubach.
Roger
the
Staub-
Cowboys. Yeah.
Yes, and it was set to be published during JFK's assassination
Okay.
happened. So they did a recall. So there's only like 16 known to be in existence. I had one in the corner of my shop here. I would have gave it away to somebody if they like. But I sold that for $1,800 within a week, rather quickly.
And where did that come from? How did you source that?
Oh God,
Boy, the longer we talk, Phil, I got ideas in my head. We need to be doing a weekly show on book finds.
Yeah, there's been some beautiful stuff that I've mistakenly found, like that one. That came from one of my early picks, and I'd have to think about it for a minute. But that's where that came from. That sat for quite a while until I pulled it out and started doing a little looking into it.
Amazon and eBay and book selling and how to grow your business. And one of the things we talk about repeatedly is know the publisher emblems. So when you say Folio Society, I just know I'm looking for that FF.
Well, now you're getting into
that,
the secrets of book sales. I'll tell you another secret. Look at the bottom of the spine. Don't read the title. Look for the publisher. That's it'll speed up your scanning of a table.
Right.
And as the Midtown Scholar, we buy a lot of university presses, small presses, that sort of thing. Books that don't have the largest print runs. And sure, you can still buy Stephen King and do well with Stephen King. He's as popular as ever. But if you're looking for those niche presses, those different types of books, you can usually tell what they are by looking at the bottom of the spine rather than taking the time to read the whole thing.
And I do know you do buy Stephen King. I watched the YouTube video where you talked about buying the first edition of it. And talked about a little bit of a history of what that book did to the publishing industry when they underestimated the number
that was neat.
They needed that changed everything.
I told you I studied to be a historian, and one of the things that I like most about being an antiquarian bookseller is that every day you learn something new. So if you're a curious person and you like learning about any number of subjects, you will love the world of old books.
Created the bookshop. I sold my first Book of Mormon ever back in those days for $5,000, 1830, Palmyra, New York. Today I could get
what is it now? 20 times that?
125,000.
Wow. So I know you could look back and go, 5,000 was still great money back then for a book. I mean, that's unbelievable money for a book back then. But that just goes to show you what has changed in the marketplace, good and bad, with the rise of the internet and eBay and Amazon. I mean, you've seen everything.
My grandfather to take.
You're working 7 days a week.
Yeah, we before COVID, we literally were open 7 days a week.
Mhm.
Now we are open 6 days a week, and we had to do that because, boy, we needed one day, I think,
Yeah.
just to we still work, but so we're closed Mondays.
Right.
But
The
it
bookstore
gives
needs
you a
to
little break.
settle down. Yeah, it needs
It
to
does.
settle down. Yeah, books have to, books on the shelf have to be shifted to the right or the left and everything cleaned up.
There's a lot of organization, especially if you're going to try and sell books in an open shop online. You got to keep everything in meticulous order. We have new and used books. So, one of the things that sets us apart is, let's say you're interested in Virginia Woolf. You can go and you can get all of her works in the modern paperback edition, which is fantastic, and people want that. But then you can also get early editions, first editions, older hardcover editions, you name it. So, and then you can get criticism about Virginia.
Do you have any tips to get rid of smell from books?
Yeah. I try to put books inside of a box, a fresh, nice, clean box with baking soda and a few dryer sheets. And I'll seal it up. And usually within 3 or 4 days, it's done the job, whether it's cigarette smoke or old musty smell of used books in an attic. It will definitely change that book's fragrance 3 or 4 days. Some have taken longer. Like I've had some really good magazines that needed to be in that box for a month.
Okay.
But a magazine is all soft paper, and so it absorbs the smell more.
I've heard of the box method with baking soda or kitty litter. I've heard. I haven't tried either of those. And usually I've tried dryer sheets, and then it smells like a dryer sheet, so you got to air that smell out.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it just needs a lot of time and fresh air to.
But it's funny we talk about this. It makes me think how much I hate dealing with that end of the business. Fascinating to watch you go into the home, and your eyes are always lit up right before you start sourcing. I can see your eyes lit up, and you're just hungry to get on in there.
You know what's kind of fun too is when I'm showing this stuff, I don't always necessarily know what I have all the time. Like I have an architectural book set. It's this French guy. I don't know how to say his
I know
name.
who you're talking about. Le Corbusier.
That's it.
Yep.
So I looked at that set and I knew there was value there. Long story short, you develop instincts.
Yeah.
But I'm showing them on video. But usually people are seeing it fresh for the first time. Now, sometimes I've done a little homework on something if I have the time, but sometimes my audience will educate me on, like my buddy called me up immediately. He's like, listen, Phil, that's like real top stuff you got there. Put that aside, blah, blah, blah. And so that's also the fun of it. I'm learning as I go.
He's an iconic architect, of course, but he also engineered and architect airplanes. You say you have a large percentage of resellers following you and bidding on your books and trying to get what's left, meat on the bone on the books?
I think I'm not 100% sure. A lot of them do sell cheap enough that resellers can buy from me. And there's a few like big name resellers I probably shouldn't mention, but there's some big deals in the book world that I buy from me occasionally. Yeah. And I really don't know. I think it's mostly collectors. But there definitely are plenty of resellers that do. And I buy probably 80 to 90% of my inventory comes from eBay. I buy it on eBay and then I'll buy a box of books or a set of books, or and usually when I buy a box of 20 books on eBay, half of them are junk. Maybe I'll put a few in the bookstore and then a few on eBay. So it's not like I can just buy loads and loads of good inventory on eBay. It's tough. I scroll through hundreds of listings to find a couple decent ones.
Now you can find almost anything, that it's at our fingertips on our computer. I think though, in some ways this has been healthy for the book world, because the books are now getting into people's hands.
Yes, well, I love that part, of course. We all do. But books, except for the truly rare, they're not rare.
No.
They're
rare. I know I saw an interview where someone asked you about rare books and you made me laugh. You said A rare book is a book that I have and you don't.
One of the underrated or misunderstood things about running a bookstore is how much physical labor goes into books, whether it's house calls or even daily book buying. You are schlepping big, heavy boxes of books all around. So it's not for everybody. It's not for the faint of heart. Running a bookstore is not sitting behind a counter and reading your favorite novel with your feet up all day, although a lot of people think it is.
Wait, you're not smoking a pipe and just and reading Tolstoy?
I've been to those bookstores, and actually, I never have really understood those bookstores. Those are the same bookstores where the booksellers don't actually want to sell any of their books. They don't really like people. They're not interested in selling books. I've never met a book I don't want to sell. I mean, I like books and I have my own things that I collect, but I don't covet things to the point where I wouldn't take your offer, if it was a fair offer, because I know that you can probably replace it.
They literally are doing phenomenal. I'll tell you a quick story. We have a guy from St. Louis contacted me 4 months ago. Just saw some Instagram posts. Something in those posts just intrigued him enough to reach out to me. He signed up for the Paper Gold group. He made a business card, never sold books before in his life. Made a couple Facebook ads for free pickups. He does a free pickup on a Sunday afternoon. This is 2 weeks into him being a bookseller. He finds a first edition Sun Also Rises in a free pickup. In a free pickup. Sells it for just under $2,000. And so, now he's doing a lot of Whatnot. He really loves Whatnot. He's probably on Whatnot 4 to 5 days a week. Did you ever travel into California to get them, or were they?
Every year. I was from the late '60s on. I was doing fantasy and science fiction conventions throughout Southern and Northern California. I participated as an exhibitor at the world's first underground comic book convention in Berkeley in 1973. Von Bode was there doing his weird theater cartoon cavalcade with all, not any teeth,
Do you still have any pamphlets or ephemera from that convention?
I have the program.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. Gold members have had great success. I think one of my members just bought 300 yearbooks.
Wow.
From a Craigslist ad.
Cool.
And so, there's a lot of money to be made from yearbooks that people don't realize.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that go under the radar like that.
Yeah.
For
that's
sure.
One of those categories. One of my members just sold a yearbook. I think I told you this previously, for $4,800.
Amazing.
Because it had a Heisman Trophy winner in it. And anytime you can get a celebrity or someone of fame in a high school or collegiate yearbook, it's going for a lot of money.
It's good as gold, man. That